Welcome to the History in Focus channel. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss more videos like this one.
This photograph depicts the wreckage of a German fighter plane piloted by Lieutenant Kirsch at the Stenay airfield in France during World War I, around 1916. The crash occurred during a period when military aviation was still an innovation, and planes frequently experienced mechanical failures or crashes during risky maneuvers. One of the worst, if not the worst, air disasters of all time occurred on March 27, 1977, at Tenerife Airport in the Canary Islands. Two Boeing 747s collided on a foggy runway with no ground radar. After being diverted from Gran Canaria, a critical communication failure sealed the fate of the flights. The KLM captain, confused by commands mixing languages, believed he had clearance to take off. However, the Pan Am flight was still taxiing on the same runway. The impact was devastating, leaving 583 dead and only 61 survivors. This disaster led to the standardization of English as the official language in global aviation. Japan Airlines Flight 123 on August 12, 1985, remains one of the most severe air accidents involving a single aircraft. The plane, departing from Tokyo for Osaka, suffered explosive decompression just 12 minutes after takeoff, resulting in the loss of the rudder and hydraulic systems, leaving the pilots without effective control. For 90 minutes, the crew heroically fought to stabilize the plane, but it eventually crashed into a mountainous area near Mount Takamagahara, killing 520 people and leaving only 4 survivors. In this image, Turkish Airlines Flight 981, a McDonnell Douglas DC-10 bound for London with a stop in Orly, crashed into the Ermenonville forest on March 3, 1974, near Paris, killing all 346 passengers on board. Known as the Ermenonville air disaster, it was caused by a communication error. Baggage handlers misinterpreted bilingual instructions in English and Turkish, leading to the rear hatch opening mid-flight. The rapid decompression damaged cables controlling the elevator's rudder and engines, leaving the pilots completely powerless. An air disaster shook New York when a Douglas DC-8 from United Airlines collided with a Lockheed from Trans World Airlines on December 16, 1960. The crash, which occurred after both planes departed from Idlewild Airport, now JFK, caused the deaths of 128 passengers and 6 people on the ground. The impact destroyed buildings such as the Pillar of Fire Church, a laundry, and a funeral home. This photo shows the wreckage of a German Albatros D.3 fighter biplane, documented in 1916. The crash occurred during World War I, at a time of intense evolution in military aviation, where pilots faced constant risks due to technical failures and the limitations of aircraft that often could not withstand aerial combat. In this photo, Air France Flight 4590 brought a tragic end to the era of the Concorde. The supersonic jet was departing Paris for New York when it struck debris left by a Continental Airlines aircraft on the runway on July 25, 2000. The impact burst a tire, sending fragments into the left-wing fuel tank, igniting an uncontrollable fire. The aircraft crashed minutes after takeoff, killing 113 people. In the image, United Airlines Flight 232, a McDonnell Douglas DC-10, is seen seconds before its attempted landing. On July 19, 1989, the plane, en route from Denver to Chicago, suffered a catastrophic failure in the tail engine that severed hydraulic lines, leaving the pilots with limited control. Despite this, the crew valiantly guided the plane to the nearest airport. The impact was devastating, but thanks to the pilots' efforts, 185 of the 296 people on board survived. American Airlines Flight 587, an Airbus A300, crashed into a residential area in Queens, New York, after a control failure during takeoff. The accident occurred on November 12, 2001, after the plane encountered turbulence shortly after departing JFK Airport. The pilot's excessive rudder maneuvers caused the tail to detach, resulting in total loss of control. The crash killed all 260 people on board and 5 on the ground. Investigations concluded pilot error as the primary cause. More than 15 years after the crash of Air India Flight 855, another accident shocked Indian and global aviation. On November 12, 1996, in northern India, a collision between two Boeing 747s, TWA Flight 763 and Kazakhstan Airlines Flight 1907 resulted in the deadliest mid-air collision in history, with 349 fatalities. The Saudi plane was departing Delhi for Dhahran, while the Kazakhstan Airlines plane descended rapidly as it approached Delhi. The Kazakh plane's tail struck the wing of the Saudi plane, causing it to spiral and crash. In this image, a French pilot lies unconscious in the cockpit of a downed Somson II-A2, a reconnaissance biplane used by France during World War I. Developed in 1916, the Somson II-A2 stood out as one of the primary reconnaissance aircraft alongside the Breguet 14, representing one-third of the French fleet by 1918. Air India Flight 182, a Boeing 747, suffered the deadliest terrorist attack involving an aircraft to that point. On June 23, 1985, the plane plunged into the Atlantic near Ireland while en route from Toronto to India, after a bomb exploded in the cargo hold. The attack, carried out by Babar al-Sikh extremists, killed all 329 on board. Investigators uncovered serious lapses in Canada's immigration security protocols, which allowed the attack to succeed. In this incident, approximately 3 hours after departing Rio de Janeiro for Paris on June 1, 2009, Air France Flight 447 disappeared over the Atlantic. The Airbus A330 experienced pitot tube icing, causing aerodynamic stall that led to its descent. All 228 on board perished. Wreckage and black boxes were recovered 2 years later, and investigators cited pilot error in managing the stall as the primary cause. Lion Air Flight 610, a Boeing 737 MAX 8, crashed into the Java Sea 13 minutes after departing Jakarta, Indonesia, on October 29, 2018, killing all 189 on board. The accident was caused by failures in the MCAS system, which forced the plane's nose downward despite pilots' corrections. 5 months later, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 experienced the same issue, killing 157. These tragedies led to the global grounding of the model for system fixes and pilot training. China Airlines Flight 811 ended in tragedy when the plane descended below the correct trajectory and crash-landed before the runway at Manila International Airport in the Philippines in 1980. The impact killed 2 of the 82 passengers on board. Investigators found that the pilots failed to properly follow approach checklists, neglecting critical configurations like flaps and speed. Iran Air Flight 655, an Airbus A300, was shot down by missiles from the USS Vincennes cruiser on July 3, 1988, killing all 290 on board. The plane was in Iranian airspace over Iranian waters on its usual route, but was mistaken for an F-14A Tomcat. The Vincennes crew tried to establish contact 10 times without success before firing. In 1996, the U.S. expressed regret and paid compensation, but did not accept legal responsibility or issue a formal apology. In these images, Air Canada Flight 797, a DC-9, faced a tragedy after smoke emerged from the rear lavatory during the flight on June 2, 1983. As dense black smoke filled the cabin, the pilot managed an emergency landing. However, after the doors opened, a flash fire engulfed the aircraft, killing 23 of the 46 on board. The accident led to mandatory smoke detectors, automatic extinguishers in lavatories, and flame-resistant materials in aircraft interiors. As Delta Flight 191, a Lockheed L-1011, approached Dallas-Fort Worth Airport on August 2, 1985, it encountered a thunderstorm and a microburst, a powerful downdraft. Within seconds, the plane lost 54 knots of airspeed, rapidly descending toward the ground. It struck the ground 1.5 kilometers from the runway, crossing a highway and killing a motorist before crashing. Of the 163 on board, 134 perished. These are images of the wreckage from the crash of United Airlines Flight 173, a DC-8 carrying 181 passengers, which went down in the suburbs of Portland, Oregon, after running out of fuel on December 28, 1978. The captain ignored repeated warnings from the flight engineer about critical fuel levels while trying to resolve a landing gear issue, causing 10 fatalities in the crash. During an air show at Skydiving Airfield near Lviv, Ukraine, the worst airshow disaster occurred when a Su-27 lost control and crashed into the crowd. The incident, on July 27, 2002, killed at least 77 people, including 28 children, and injured over 500. Investigations revealed serious errors, including inadequate training for complex maneuvers and negligent organization of spectator safety zones. In this image, National Airlines Flight 193, a Boeing 727, is seen partially submerged after crashing into shallow waters in Escambia Bay near Pensacola, Florida. On May 8, 1978, during its approach to the regional airport, the aircraft descended too quickly in low visibility, hitting the water before the runway. Out of 58 on board, 3 lost their lives. In this image, a Grumman F-6F Hellcat crashes while attempting to land on the USS Enterprise in 1943. Landing on aircraft carriers was perilous, especially during intense combat in the Pacific theater of World War II. The Hellcat, designed for durability, was instrumental in the war effort, shooting down over 5,000 enemy aircraft despite dangerous incidents like the one depicted. In this photograph, a pilot escapes from his Grumman F-6F Hellcat engulfed in flames after a crash landing aboard the USS Lexington in 1945. Carrier landings were among the most hazardous operations in World War II. The Hellcat, known for its resilience, played a vital role in securing Allied air superiority despite frequent high-risk situations like this. This image captures a B-17 Flying Fortress from the United States 15th Air Force ablaze after being struck by anti-aircraft fire over a rail yard in Niš, Yugoslavia on April 15, 1944. Known for its robustness, the B-17 was designed to withstand heavy damage, but severe attacks like the one shown here often led to catastrophic losses. This striking photograph, taken by another pilot, shows a B-17 moments after being struck by its own bombs during a World War II mission. The resulting explosion severed its left wing, seen flying through the air in the image. While such incidents were rare, they were devastating, caused by malfunctions or debris triggering bombs prematurely. This photo captures the precise moment a B-26 Marauder bomber from the United States 12th Air Force is hit directly by an 88mm anti-aircraft shell during a raid on Toulon, France on September 11, 1944. The impact destroyed one of its engines, leading to a catastrophic descent. This rare image captures a unique moment of aerial combat during World War I, showing a collision between a German and a British aircraft. These incidents were frequent in the intense dogfights of the era, where the close proximity of aircraft and daring maneuvers often resulted in fatal crashes. With no safety measures like parachutes, pilots relied solely on their skills and luck to survive. The Hindenburg, a symbol of the Zeppelin era, was destroyed in a catastrophic fire while attempting to dock in Lakehurst, New Jersey on May 6, 1937. The disaster killed 36 of the 97 on board. Investigations suggested a spark likely ignited the hydrogen gas used in the airship. This event marked the end of the Zeppelin age and left iconic images of a tragedy that changed aviation history. This may have been aviation's worst nightmare. A Boeing 747 exploded mid-air without an initial explanation. On July 17, 1996, TWA Flight 800 en route from New York to Paris disintegrated shortly after takeoff, killing all 230 on board. After extensive investigation, the NTSB concluded that the explosion was caused by the ignition of flammable fuel vapors in the center wing tank, likely triggered by a short circuit. This photograph captures the final moments of Pacific Southwest Airlines, PSA, Flight 182, a Boeing 727, as it descends toward a residential area in San Diego, California in 1978. The disaster occurred following a mid-air collision with a Cessna 172 during the approach. The impact killed all 144 on board both planes and several people on the ground. This rare photograph captures the collision of Aeromexico Flight 498 with a small Piper aircraft on August 31, 1986, over Cerritos, California. The mid-air collision resulted in the destruction of both planes, killing 67 on board and 15 on the ground when wreckage fell onto a residential area. This image depicts KLM Cityhopper Flight 433, a Saab 340, moments before it crashed near Amsterdam Schiphol Airport on April 4, 1994. A misjudgment by the crew during a return approach after engine trouble caused the plane to lose stability and crash into a field, killing 3 of the 24 on board. In this image, an aircraft rests near the Severn River in Chepstow, Wales, following a crash on September 12, 1994. The plane suffered significant damage while attempting to land. The muddy terrain complicated rescue efforts, but the crew's swift actions ensured the survival of all on board. Police recovery teams work amid the wreckage of Air New Zealand Flight TE 901 in this photograph. On November 28, 1979, the sightseeing flight crashed into Mount Erebus on Ross Island, Antarctica, in whiteout conditions. The disaster claimed the lives of all 237 passengers and 20 crew members on board. This image recreates the final moments of Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370, which vanished on March 8, 2014, with 239 people on board. After veering off course and flying for hours with systems deactivated, the aircraft plunged into the Indian Ocean. Investigators believe fuel depletion led to a spiral descent. During BOAC Flight 712, a Boeing 707 experienced a catastrophic engine fire shortly after takeoff from Heathrow Airport, London, on April 8, 1968. The crew managed a successful emergency landing, but the fire spread rapidly. 5 lives were lost among the 127 on board, despite the crew's heroic efforts. This image captures the tragic collision of 2 Żelazny Aerobatic team planes during the Radom Air Show in Poland on September 1, 2007. The aircraft collided head-on while attempting to regroup after a maneuver, scattering debris in the sky. Both pilots perished in front of thousands of spectators. This photograph captures the final moments of National Airlines Flight 102, recorded by a security camera at Bagram Air Base, Afghanistan, on April 29, 2013. The Boeing 747-400's improperly secured cargo shifted during takeoff, damaging critical control systems. The plane stalled and crashed, killing all 7 crew members. A British Airways Boeing 777 bound for London caught fire at Las Vegas Airport on September 8, 2015. The incident forced the evacuation of 170 people via emergency slides, with 14 suffering minor injuries. A catastrophic failure in the left engine caused flames and visible smoke. The captain declared an emergency and coordinated the evacuation, averting a more tragic outcome. This striking image depicts the tale of United Airlines Flight 826 resting in a residential neighborhood on Sterling Place, Brooklyn, following a mid-air collision with TWA Flight 266 on December 16, 1960. The tragedy killed all 134 on board the 2 aircraft and 6 people on the ground. This photograph captures the aftermath of a catastrophic collision at the Wings Over Dallas Air Show in Texas on November 12, 2022. A B-17 Flying Fortress and a P-63 King Cobra collided mid-air during a demonstration, resulting in the deaths of all 6 occupants of the 2 planes. This photograph captures the harrowing moment a small cargo plane struck the side of a house in Chicago on November 18, 2014. While the pilot perished, the residents escaped unscathed. The crash, caused by mechanical failure shortly after takeoff, underscored the risks of urban aviation incidents. United States Airways Flight 1549, a routine flight, faced a dire emergency when both engines failed after a bird strike shortly after takeoff from New York's LaGuardia Airport. Captain Chesley Sullenberger executed a miraculous water landing on the Hudson River on January 15, 2009, saving all 155 lives on board. This act of skill became the Miracle on the Hudson. This photograph shows the aftermath of an American Airlines Boeing 737 accident in Kingston, Jamaica on December 23, 2009. The aircraft overshot the runway during a rainstorm, fracturing its fuselage near the Caribbean Sea. Miraculously, all 154 occupants survived, though 44 sustained injuries. This photo depicts a French pilot making an emergency landing after a failed attack on German Zeppelin hangars near Brussels in World War I, circa 1915. The biplane became entangled in trees, adding an unusual twist to the failed mission. Soldiers later climbed the trees to recover the aircraft. An Aloha Airlines Boeing 737-200 experienced explosive decompression during Flight 243, tearing away part of the fuselage and exposing passengers to high-speed winds. The incident occurred on April 28, 1988, en route from Hilo to Honolulu, Hawaii. Despite the loss of a large section of the roof, the crew managed to land the plane, saving 94 of the 95 on board. This gripping image captures the Hawker Hunter jet seconds before its catastrophic crash during an air show in the United Kingdom on August 22, 2015. The plane failed to complete a loop, crashing onto the A27 highway, destroying vehicles, and tragically claiming 11 lives. This photo shows the B-52 Stratofortress moments before its fatal crash at Fairchild Air Force Base in 1994. Reckless maneuvers by Lieutenant Colonel Arthur Bud Holland pushed the aircraft beyond its limits, resulting in a catastrophic loss of control and the deaths of all 4 crew members. This photograph captures the remains of a German glider lodged against a building on Attila Street in Budapest on February 4, 1945. The glider, part of a desperate attempt to deliver supplies to encircled German troops, crashed into the structure during its approach to the city. This photo captures the aftermath of a military aircraft crash at East Boston Airport in July 1929. The plane sustained heavy damage upon a failed landing attempt. Although the fuselage was destroyed, the crew managed to survive with minor injuries. In this dramatic image, a military aircraft lies inverted near Washington, D.C., after a failed landing attempt. The crash caused extensive damage to the plane's fuselage, but no fatalities were reported, showcasing the dangers of early aviation technology. TWA Flight 163 faced one of the aviation industry's most devastating tragedies. On August 19, 1980, the Lockheed L-1011 returned to Riyadh after a cargo fire. Despite a safe landing, the pilot taxied to the terminal, stopping for nearly 3 minutes without evacuating passengers. It took 23 minutes after engine shutdown to access the aircraft, by which time all 301 passengers had died from smoke inhalation before the doors were opened. This photograph displays the wreckage of a tragic accident near Hudson on May 20, 1940. The crash claimed the lives of Elmer Johnson and Arthur Bullard. Investigators are seen combing through the debris in an attempt to determine the cause of the fatal incident. In this photograph, an amphibious utility plane lies overturned in a field near Squantum, Massachusetts, after an accident on June 10, 1942. Despite significant damage to the aircraft, the incident resulted in only 2 injuries, with witnesses gathering to observe the scene. Captured here is the racing aircraft, the galloping ghost moments before its fatal crash at the Reno Air Races in Nevada on September 16, 2011. A structural failure at high speed sent the plane hurtling into the crowd, killing the pilot and 10 spectators and injuring more than 60 others. This chilling photograph, taken by a tourist, captures the last moments of passengers aboard an ill-fated flight. Shortly after this image was taken, the aircraft suffered catastrophic failure, plunging to its final destruction, leaving a scene of complete devastation. During the public demonstration of a Waco glider in 1943, a maintenance oversight caused the starboard wing to detach mid-flight. The glider plummeted from 2,000 feet over Lambert Field in St. Louis, Missouri, killing 10 people in a tragedy that underscored the perils of aviation at the time. In this tragic photograph, Indian actor Jayan is seen performing a daring aerial stunt hanging from a helicopter during a film shoot. Moments later, a miscalculation led to his fatal fall, highlighting the extreme dangers involved in on-screen aviation sequences. This haunting image depicts a crash in Ruislip, England in 1947, where an aircraft collided with a residential home. Despite severe damage to the building, the residents miraculously survived, highlighting the unpredictability of aviation accidents in urban areas. This image recreates the moment when Air Florida Flight 90, a Boeing 737, collided with the 14th Street Bridge in Washington, shortly before plunging into the icy Potomac River in January 1982. The tragedy left a trail of destruction, with the bridge strewn with debris. Moments before hitting the icy Potomac River, Air Florida Flight 90 struck 7 vehicles on the 14th Street Bridge during its descent. The collision left a trail of destruction before the plane submerged, cementing its place as one of aviation's darkest moments. This haunting image captures the serene moments aboard Flight 571 before its crash into the Andes on October 13, 1972. Of the 45 on board, 27 survived the initial impact, but faced brutal conditions of cold, starvation, and isolation in the mountains. For 72 harrowing days, survivors of Flight 571 endured unimaginable hardships in the Andes. Their desperate struggle against starvation and the freezing environment has since become one of history's most compelling tales of human resilience and survival. The image captures the harrowing moment a Japanese kamikaze plane dives toward an American warship during World War II. The pilot's reckless determination symbolized the brutal intensity of Japanese soldiers at the time, resulting in devastating explosions and countless lives lost, including that of the aircraft's pilot. Smiling and giving a thumbs up before his fateful parachute jump, Stephen Hilder had no idea of the tragedy ahead. In July 2003, both of his parachutes failed during descent, leading to his untimely death and one of the most shocking skydiving incidents in history. This photo immortalizes the final moments of a Boeing 747 that suffered a catastrophic structural failure in August 1985. Losing all control, the plane crashed into Mount Takamagahara, killing 520 of the 524 people on board, marking one of aviation's deadliest disasters. In these images, the Challenger space shuttle is seen in the moments captured during its brief seconds of ascent. Only 73 seconds after leaving the launch pad, a catastrophic failure in the right booster resulted in the total disintegration of the spacecraft. The tragedy on January 28, 1986, claimed the lives of all 7 crew members, including a teacher known as Krista McAuliffe, shocking the world and marking one of the darkest moments in the history of space exploration. Pan Am. Flight 759 met disaster shortly after takeoff from New Orleans International Airport on July 9, 1982. Downdrafts from a microburst forced the aircraft into trees and a residential area in Kenner, Louisiana. The crash claimed the lives of 138 passengers, 7 crew members, and 8 people on the ground. A memorial for Pan Am Flight 759 victims is located at Our Lady of Perpetual Help Church in Kenner, Louisiana, honoring the 153 lives lost in the disaster, along with the community members affected by the crash. American Airlines Flight 191 became the deadliest air accident in United States history. On May 25, 1979, shortly after departing from O'Hare Airport in Chicago en route to Los Angeles, the left engine of the McDonnell Douglas DC-10 detached, damaging the wing and severing vital hydraulic lines. The plane lost control, flipped in the air, and crashed in a nearby field, killing 273 people on board and 2 on the ground. The crash generated a massive explosion visible for miles, shocking those at the airport and nearby areas. This image shows the aftermath of BOAC Flight 911, a Boeing 707 that disintegrated mid-air on March 5, 1966, near Mount Fuji, Japan. Violent wind turbulence caused by mountain air currents tore apart the aircraft, resulting in the deaths of all 124 people on board. In these images, TransAsia Flight is seen in its final moments after a catastrophic engine failure, shortly after taking off from Taipei, Taiwan in February 2015. The aircraft veered violently, striking a busy highway, tearing off a taxi and part of a bridge, before crashing into the Keelung River. The impact was devastating, claiming 43 lives out of the 58 occupants and becoming one of the most tragic aviation accidents in Taiwan's history. Moments before a tragedy, Olga Sheena captured a scene that would become unique. Her husband holding their sleeping child on the steps of Metrojet Flight 9268 in Sharm el-Sheikh. In the caption, she wrote, We are going home. Minutes after takeoff, a devastating explosion destroyed the plane mid-air, scattering debris across the Sinai Desert. All 224 passengers and crew on board lost their lives, making it one of the worst tragedies in modern aviation history.